We all know what this boat is. We've seen it in the back of your neighbor's yard, or maybe even your own, and time has seemed to got the best of it. But it doesn't have to be that way. Imagine what this boat can be redone to, knowing what we know now. It doesn't have to be crazy. There doesn't have to be a whole bunch of hatches everywhere. We just have to build it better, with systems that will allow this boat to last more or less forever, if done correctly. New things that were never done back when this boat was originally created, we can do now. Boats like these were the original champions and pioneers of everything we have today. Their progress led to massive strides in tournament fishing and outdoor recreation. Countless memories from families made on boats like these. It only takes one memory to change somebody's destiny, shift their interests, and mold their future. So it's time to rebuild this thing from scratch, better than it ever was before, so it can give new memories to the next generation of sportsmen and leave an imprint to mold their future the way ours was. It just needs one thing. It needs you. All right, first guys, I want to do something I've never done in any other video before, which is talk about the entire process from start to finish. If you just want to see how we built this boat, go ahead and skip to this time. I understand. This process should help you decide whether or not you want to restore that boat you have in your backyard, or whether you want to find one on the Facebook Marketplace or Craigslist. Go through the entire building process from low to high, see which one is better for you, and whether or not it's actually comparable or able to be the current crop of stuff like this. Because this is our competition. Essentially, this is what we're going to try to compete against. We're going to try to build a better boat for cheaper. Let's see if we can pull it off. So it's 16.8 feet, which is like a whole foot longer than I think the boat we're about to build. It's just slightly under 16. 4 foot 6 inches, bottom beam 6 inches wider. Max is a 58 horse. That's about the same. Fuel, 6 gallon fuel. So 3 persons, 555, 1,700 pounds. That's crazy. Probably that motor adds quite a bit more weight to it. I mean, the whole package pre-prep with freight, and this is not including, this might include taxes, but it's really close to 20 grand right now. So what do you get for that? Let's check it out. Get a solid aluminum frame. That's good. You would think they would get rid of this, but apparently it's just like a key thing where they love to have that little bottom side hatch that you got to bend down to get anything out of. Got a Minn Kota edge. I'm hoping that's a 55 pound, but it's likely a 45. A 45 pound Minn Kota edge, believe it or not, will pull that boat pretty good. A side storage for the rods, I do like that. We can integrate that idea. Some courtesy lights, some basic carpet, which I think we can maybe do a little better than the carpet. A fairly spacious cockpit, which I think because we're gonna make a rental boat, the space inside the cockpit is a very key thing to do. So we're gonna probably go ahead going with that. Little standard fish finder, little hook 4X, we can do that. Gauges, ignition, throttle controls, cup holders, we can do that too. Storage underneath the seats, pretty good considering there's not a whole lot of places to add the storage in the boat because it's so small. So you either eat up on cockpit space by making storage, or you got to put it somewhere else. So storage underneath the seat seems like a pretty good idea. The back deck looks pretty basic. Back hatch for the gas tank and probably the batteries. Yeah, there it is. Even still more room to put stuff back in there. It's pretty spacious. That wider top and bottom beam matters. Likely on the sides of the front and back compartment, that's all foam. This is what we're looking at for like the max amount of storage. We can duplicate that, but probably not right there. We're gonna probably duplicate this in the front and get rid of that little bottom side hatch thingy in the front. The Livewell, I've never been a fan of it. I understand why they did that because they integrated the console into the Livewell, but that just makes the boat probably lean more on the right when that thing is completely full. Plus the Livewell is just small and I think insufficient for any sort of real tournament fishing. It would make it, but that's not impressive. And so I think this boat would definitely need at least a 50 horse. I don't know, that boat's pretty heavy. I don't know if it'll run with a 25, but our boat doesn't need, it's rated up for 50. I think rated up even for 60, but a 20, it probably would plane with a 20 horse and the 25 would be more than sufficient to get it around 20 to 25 miles an hour. Okay, I really like this boat, but not for 20 grand. Truth be told, I can probably replicate this boat, build it a lot better in certain spots, and even if I have to get a motor, I can still get away with pretty much the same exact boat for only 10 grand. And if I can get a cheap boat with a working motor, it's even maybe a third of that cost. Here's how I would do it. First off, if I didn't already have this boat sitting in the back of my yard waiting to be redone, I would just go on Craigslist or the Facebook Marketplace like here, and generally there's a steal of aluminum boats. Some people have them overpriced. They want too much money for junk, so you just got to shop around and find the right one. Some of them you can find with a still with a fairly good working motor. Maybe the interior's a little shot. They just want to get rid of it. And those are the ones you need to move on. Like this one is a pretty good deal. This one's sick. It's not even a John boat, but man, I like that. Man, I can't figure out why I like that boat so much. Check out this one. That's a steal for a working motor, like less than $5,000. Oh, but this one is the one we were looking for, the gem. 1900, could probably talk him down to 15 if I'm really serious. So I'm gonna sit there and haggle with him and get on a consenting price. Even if it is 1900, it's still a steal. It's a perfect frame for what I need. After you've got your project boat, hop on over here to tvnation.net. This is where we're going to be sourcing pretty much everything we need to build this boat. We're going to be using the 1648 John boat to bass boat kit, which will work on 16 to 17 foot John boats, but you can also get smaller Weekend Warrior kits for like 1436 John boats and up, as well as aluminum deep V build kits. So anything you really need, but this is the base kit we're going to be using today. You have 3 choices to choose from. The standard, which is just the basic Betty, bare minimum. We give you one more hatch that you can use as a Livewell, and also this is the deluxe with a rod locker. And you can also just search dry hatch, and then a bunch of other size hatches can pull up, and you can just add and put stuff wherever to make your own specific kit for yourself. But right now, this is just a good base that gives you all these things. By the time you get a 16-foot boat, you have the actual option of adding a console without cramping everything else in the boat. So I really do want one. So if you can reuse the one in your boat right now, great. If you have to weld one, you know, that's great too. But it's so much easier and cheaper just to go check out our RPD consoles. The 1422 side console kit is actually very good quality. I know these pictures don't do it much justice, but they are pretty rad. Very thick, durable. They're everything you need. They even got a little side bevel that contours to the side of the hull to keep your throttle control straight. They have brackets, add-ons, and they even have center consoles and a bunch of other stuff. And we're also going to get pour foam. We're going to get 3 kits. Each kit equals 300 pounds of reserve buoyancy, 900 pounds, well over whatever the boat had in it initially. We're also going to be needing wiring kits. We're going to be using a basic kit, which is the basic Betty, run-of-the-mill. The deluxe, if you're just wanting to install a lot more, including a breaker and 6-gauge wire for the trolling motor. And then we have our premium, which is you're trying to wire a whole lot of things. And then our supreme, which comes for all of that, plus a safety kit. And I think a wiring base for all the new age UHD fish finders, which is why that like 6-gang fuse block is there. But we are going to choose the basic kit because that's what we actually installed in the boat. But then we also went and got our electrical safety kit, which is the bilge pump, bilge hose, and nav lights, which is the bare minimum that anybody should ever have in their boat. And now on to the decking. Now, we're huge fans of EVA foam. The lids, if you get them stock with the kit, they're gap for EVA foam or paint or whatever. And we are specifically fans of HydroTurf because of how robust and durable and how awesome it looks. And there's a million different camo colors, anyway, from actual true outdoor camo colors to flamboyant, flashy ones, whatever fits your style. But we also have our TBN camos. This is our dark, but we're going to be using our light camo for this build. We're at 4658 with all the basic run-of-the-mill stuff, assuming we're running wooden decks and sidewalls and subfloors, because that's what even most companies today will do, because wooden decks are really good at just staying there and not causing any problems. When you start adding wooden hatches, it becomes a problem. That's why we recommend aluminum lids, but installing them in here and glassing them over with epoxy, we'll be talking about that entire process. But first, let's go look at what we would use for as wood. Now, 1/2 inch or 15-30 seconds, which is about as close as you're going to get to 1/2 inch, is pretty good for most people. If you're like closer to 300 pounds, 5/8 is probably a little recommended. You can probably get your boat done in 2, but 3 is recommended because you'll be doing odd cuts that you can't reuse that piece of wood and you'll just need a whole new sheet. We're also going to look at sidewalls. Hardwood plywood, there's this 1/4 inch thick hardwood, which is about $30 a sheet. There's even this thinner red stuff, which is like less than $20 a sheet at 3/16. That stuff's even better. Sidewalls are not load bearing. They're going to be attached to aluminum frames, and I mean, that's just the perfect stuff to use for sidewalls, inner walls. So for the decking and sidewalls, we're at under $200 for all the wood. You have to include 1 sheet of 3/4 inch plywood. If you're going to be redoing your transom, you'll need to cut out the template and double that up and epoxy it so that it lasts. In fact, you're going to have to preserve all the wood in order for it to last. Now, you can use standard Rust-Oleum oil-based enamel, which is pretty good, but it's not going to last you like a long time. The best stuff to actually preserve wood, which you'll get a lot of longevity, is to glass it over with a deep penetrating epoxy resin. West Systems 105 with a slow hardener or its equivalent somewhere else is what I recommend for sealing wood. Ironically, the epoxy costs just as much as all the wood you're going to need to build your boat, but we're still under $400 for everything, and that is a steal. But for those of you who are trying to build a very robust boat that is built to last through immense punishment, we're going to just go there, because that's on the higher end for sure. For one, we're going to add aluminum transom because we could just redo this wood, but see what happens. Well, this is a treated plywood transom. Let's be fair. but I've redone epoxy transoms and I've had to replace those after extensive like wear and tear on the boat. And I'm just like, I want a one and done solution. I don't want to put up with this, plus all the damage that happens to it. Let's just go ahead and stick an aluminum transom in here, because aluminum, much like this boat, will last a very long time. So aluminum transom will arguably last the life of the boat. So will an aluminum deck, ironically, so we'll be adding our sheet pack. I'm picking the 1648 sheet pack kit, which if you just choose that add-on at the beginning when you're going to the 1648 kit, it gives you that add-on drop. It just knows to give you that kit, and this is pretty much the result of what you can get from it. It comes with 16-foot wide by 4-foot long sheets, and you run your cross beams that wide and put your sheets just like so. Very easy process. It's actually easier than wood if we're getting technical, but let's talk about some accessories. I want some accessories. Let's start with the most basic, but still a really important one. These through hole brackets that we designed to go on the very back of the transom. I mean, the old primitive ways to run it through the sidewall out the side of the boat. This is so much better. Secondly, if you have a true john boat, you're probably going to need a trolling motor bracket. These bass boat style john boats that are kind of retrofitted, a lot of times they have a bow that allows you to bypass this step, but we still added one anyways because I think it's actually better. In fact, I modded mine and cut out aluminum pieces from the sheet metal pack and then put them over here just to cover the sides. I thought it looked a little cleaner. And also, most of this boat will be an open layout with very little hatches, and that gets very annoying very quickly. So we made these vertical tackle storages. These vertical day boxes are killer. Like, enough of them will replace the need for you to even add more hatches. Like, I put one, you'll end up getting 6 by the time you're all done. Also, these gear caddies. We have one, actually have 2 of these. One on the side where the passenger is, and one up there to help you out while you're trolling motoring out and navigating from the front. And we're also going to add a trolling motor tray. We have like 4 versions to choose from. Just choose the one that's right for you, but nobody wants to have their foot stood up there like a stork. When trolling is very uncomfortable over time, so most people like it to be flush with the deck. One thing we did forget is the Livewell kit. We specifically tailored our Livewells to be fitted for these flow-right kits because they are the best in the market. So we have the premium kit, which includes everything under the sun, all the fittings, a Livewell timer, everything that's premium. Then we have the starter kit, which just gives you the basic fittings of what you would need. The truth be told, you still got to buy your own hoses and your own hose clamps. And by the time it's done, you're not saving a whole lot of money versus just getting this thing. So I would tell you just to get the premium kit. But for those of you who are just like, nah, it's too much, we went with the starter kit. In fact, we actually got the starter kit for this boat, so we'll be adding it to our cart here. Now let's go look. That is the last thing. What does our cart look like? Ew, it's pretty up there. But this is a build that's going to be robust. Remember, we bought all these things. Well, some of them are just for bougie comfortableness, like all these accessories. And a lot of it, like the aluminum decks and sidewalls and transom, the turf, the major wiring kit job, all that stuff is meant to last for a very long time, despite the abuse. As somebody who has started out here with a cheap route just to get a boat out there that can fish and do everything it's supposed to do, it's the biggest letdown when something starts to fail and you realize you'd have to rebuild it again to fix it. So here it is, one of the old-time 1648 jumbos that were retrofitted to be bass boats. You might be a little terrified when you open this thing up and start to gut it and finding things that just don't pair well. Guessing it was pretty lawless back then with not a whole lot of real regulations or anyone to hold their feet to the fire. So you just get what you get. Doesn't really matter because we're going to rip it all out anyways. Starting with these end caps. They're notorious welded on end caps around the treated plywood transom. That's got to go. And truth be told, this back platform was actually built pretty okay, but it wasn't going to fit the Livewell, so we'll just cut it out too. Do not let previous framing in the boat dictate the creativity and the ultimate purpose that you want your boat to achieve. You'll regret it later. Only keep what you think is beneficial and get rid of the rest. Like all that foam in there, who knows what it actually is. Let's take a look at it. It doesn't appear to be closed cell because it looks like Swiss cheese. And there's also kind of all kinds of debris in here from, I think there was green AstroTurf and the mud. And look at all the AstroTurf. There is no drain holes in the bottom gussets. Like there's no gussets. Like I don't know how did it all get in there? Like it was a sealed floor with foam surrounding the middle. I just don't get how all that HydroTurf made it down there. It's kind of mind-boggling. Another thing that is surprising but good is that though this foam looked like Swiss cheese, none of it was saturated with water. One thing you have to look for is corrosion damage around where they would put the foam. Notoriously, it's always in the back beams in the back of the hull where there's this oxidation impeding this white stuff, and you need to grind that away to look for actual holes in the aluminum. That's pretty bad. We'll have to do something about that. But luckily, it's only on the rib and not on the hull. But truly, no boat like this is complete without a rotting treated plywood transom that is somewhat preserved with all the 2-cycle motor oil that splashed onto it over the years. This is problem number 1 to solve. After the plasma cutter caught that transom on fire, I felt it was probably best to use a circular saw and anything else to try and get these caps off. They're kind of a pain. We'll figure out a way to replace them later. One thing's for sure, the transom, just look at it. It's gotta go. To build a whole deck around this with a transom that busted is just to risk everything, like playing Russian roulette, because there's no telling when the thing is just gonna implode. Oh, it's pretty good back there, except for like one. Oh, never mind. That's real bad. No. Well, most of it's not that bad. There's only oh geez, yeah, it's pretty terrible there. Ooh, that's some bad stuff. Well, we can fix that. Oh. So if you order one of our transoms, 12. See this? 20 inches. We're gonna try and keep as much as we can in. Obviously, we lost that. That was actually bondoed in, so there was problems here earlier because that is pretty much chewed away. You can see some bondo right there. This transom has some pretty serious problems. So I was draining that, and then obviously cleaning the inside as best we could, getting that all out. That was a big mess. We drilled 3/8 inch holes on the bottom. Should have went lower there. Probably will have to finagle a lower hole there. That's how we got the water to drain from the inside out, because there's no drainage in the middle. I would like, once the transom's in, to paint the whole boat, including the inside. That way the inside has some protection against galvanic corrosion. Like all that is corrosion. Not near as bad as this, but it's still there. In fact, because it's there and it should not be, but it is. Super common for these old trackers and lows, these pre-2K hulls like this. But other than that, the rest of the hull's in fantastic shape. Right, time to replace that old rotten transom with the new transom kit, which is pretty much an aluminum equivalent of the pieces of wood you would have to glue together in order to make a new one. You cut it just like plywood in much the same way. And in 20 minutes, you can have it lightly installed, like so, because it's very simple. You don't have to seal it with epoxy, like you do wood. But this only solves one problem. There's still the matter of the giant cheese holes from the corrosion that we have to deal with. I figured, hey, since it's an aluminum transom, we can just weld the aluminum sheet right to the transom, and then voila, I don't have to replace that whole back sheet. But in honesty, I should have just probably done that if I could do it all over again. But I didn't, and I did that instead, and you want to know what? It does work. And like they say, a grinder and paint will make you the welder you ain't. Quite solid and firm feeling. It's very, very firming just in this state when it's only half put together. Yeah, down here, accidentally welded the stupid hardware. That's gonna be a problem. I have to figure that out without screwing up the transom more. I lucked out that this boat came with aluminum sidewalls and subfloor, like so. If you get one of these old boats and it has a wooden subfloor, that's pretty much the norm. This was an exception, so I will take it, because if this boat is ever gonna last as long as I need it to, it can't have any wood in it. Now let's go on to the frame. The lids that you get are already in a framed track, so all you have to do is stick that frame track on top of the actual frame you're putting in your boat. So all you're really doing is framing the hole size for the hatch to drop in, and then you're T-framing all the aluminum. So one angle turns backwards, the other one needs to be butted up right next to it facing forward. And in the case of a Livewell, there is a right way to frame it and a wrong way to frame it. We're framing it the wrong way right now, so you don't have to later. So you cannot box the Livewell in with angle because the lid won't fit. Include several sticks of tubing for the Livewell because it has to be boxed in with tubing as its own sealed compartment inside the boat, like so. That way there's an end for the angle to T-frame against that. You cannot actually install it without tubing. Unless, of course, you're making your own hatches from scratch, but that's like a whole different thing from what we're doing. The Livewell will need to be elevated at least 3 inches off of whatever floor it's on in order to clear the through-hole fitting from the bottom, which is the drain. You'll need to add additional undersupports with the Livewell underneath so that it can hold all that weight with the water as the boat is shuttering down the lake. In this case, we're using the boat stock angle frame to go ahead and reframe this, but you might have to actually bend some angle and make those side brackets yourself. While the Livewell is in position, you can go ahead and run the plumbing. If you wait too long to fit and, plumb the Livewell, it actually gets very tedious the longer the build process goes on and the more stuff is in the boat. It's better to get it out of the way. It should be the transom, then the subfloor, then really the Livewell before you get too deep into the framing. The next thing I need to plan before I get too far ahead of myself is running all the cables and the wiring to the console. I have this old used Gen 2 25 horse Merc that's just been waiting to have its day, so finally we'll do it. It's already rigged for a console, so it'll be pretty easy just to convert it. But just so you know, if you wanted to convert this back to a tiller, it's about the same money it would be to convert it back to a console if you had a tiller. Hey, if you guys have made it this far in the video, it means you have at least had to like it in some capacity. Please leave a like and a share and a comment and even subscribe if you want, but hit that like button. All that funky stuff you saw me do in the back, I'll explain all that later because it really doesn't matter until we get to later. What matters now is finishing out the rest of the frame, but I can't see us going too much farther forward until we get the seats figured out. Whenever I can rivet, I do, but sometimes you have to weld because rivets just aren't going to work. And I had to actually make one extra hatch, which was not planned, but if you're going to do it DIY, you can do it this way. And you can actually do it that exact same way out of rivets, just not as good. One thing these will do is last. So no need to worry about the screws stripping out of the plastic or any issues like that. I can't foresee these ever really going anywhere. I kept wanting to do a console first, but there was just no way for me to form in my head how far away it would have to be from the seating if the seating wasn't there. So the seating had to come first. Really, I build a boat generally from front to back at this time. There's just no way. If you're going to build a console boat, you need to build it from back to front. And hopefully if you got one of these old bass boats, it came with a console that wasn't trashed and you can just reuse it, because trying to remake a console stinks. But if you want to upgrade a console or just get a brand new one, I would definitely go with those RPD consoles. I would have totally taken that thing over this, even though this came out pretty sweet and it's aluminum and it kind of just matches our whole theme here. Back's all finished here. minor tweaks here before that gets dropped in and installed. I held off on here. We got to run the conduits because they will go in here. Down there, we're going to install this very basic fish finder. I bought 3 of these a long time ago for like a screaming deal. 4 rental boats because I had to launch us free, so I got 3 of those. This is the compartments. I'll end up grinding the ends of the rivets down because we'll be turfing these in there. You won't be able to see those rivets. It's the bottom. We used our hat channel. We sell hat channel just like this. We'll probably include it in the Bass Boat Booster Kit for people who want to replicate this design. And then we'll probably end up moving these hinges up a little bit and gator matting this, so this just slam on aluminum. It slams on an actual mat just for comfort and just for vibration and all that stuff. We'll probably be doing that, but just right now, for the sake of design, everything is kind of loosely in here. And obviously on top of these plates will be turfed. The only deviation where I really truly went off the line here is 1, I made that console, and then 2, I made this hatch because I had to elevate the hatch to make sure the starter battery is going on. I had these lithium batteries, Power Queen, again, awesome batteries, but you can't use lithium as a starter battery, so really we got a Group 24 lead acid starting battery from Deca Marine down here in from USA Battery. And because the terminals are so high, they sit right high with their too easy to start a fire. So in the midst of making straps and tracks for those batteries to not ever move, we made a hatch that's elevated. Just kind of put it together real loosely. That's 090 on top of 1/8 inch angle with hat channel in the middle. And that's just because I know people will be stepping on this constantly to get up to the back deck. This will be under constant serious stress at any given time. And that will be here. And this will also be on a hinge. It likely might be on a hinge. They can't open that way, so it's going to have to open forward. So that is what it is. These will all have to be open forward like this because that's just the way that it's designed. Ran into a problem with the rotor steering. Didn't come with all the parts, but that was actually super easy to install in there. I did this with all the sheets from the kit. I just, I seamed 2 pieces together right there, and then everything else. The whole area was bent. And the front is all 1/8 inch plate on the 063, and then the back is 090 plate. But overall, the whole thing together is very solid. We have to get different shifter cables that are 2 feet shorter. 10 foot is about as long as we're going to be able to go. The shifter's got to be like right there. Now we're going to move to the front deck, which is going to be very easy because it's already built up. We're just going to have to do some improvements like this angle here. That's all basic stuff. We have 1 piece of tubing left, and I saved it specifically for this area that we'll need it. All right, so here, this front deck is not looking too bad. It's already fairly built up. Like all this is like street sign aluminum, and I know that is what it is, but it works. And they already got sidewalls, already got T-framed angle. All we're going to do is build onto this. So underneath here, that's angle and tubing. We put 1 piece of tubing right here. That'll be a main structural beam that's reinforced by the angle, which just allows me to have an overhanging lip. And then this is some of the sheet metal that we used for everything else, and we just cut a piece of it out to kind of level it out, because this is a big drop. Anything over 1/16, you want to level it out. And this is definitely, I think, closer to 090. It's very thick. So leveling that out, also leveling it out here. And then the hatch will drop right in there. Obviously, we won't be sheet metaling it all until we pour the foam in and we make sure all the wiring is ran for the navigation and trolling motor. So we had to run a conduit there, but aside from that, it's looking very good.
So we're still a few steps away from actually being able to attach the deck to the frame, but we can still make it right now to see how it fits and make any adjustments if needed. We are using Graphics Duralar, which is a clear plastic film templating material that does not crinkle. It is the best stuff I have ever used. You can see right through it. No more having to get construction paper or cardboard and guesstimate where you need to cut. You only need to make sure that it's straight and cut correctly. So just make sure that it's pulled tight before you cut it. Then it's just a matter of taking that straight edge ruler and making your lines around the hatch, around the pedal tray, around pedestal mounts if you have them framed in. And then once you've double checked your lines, maybe even triple checked them, because remember, however straight this template is however good your deck's going to be when you cut it. Make sure your cuts are equally as straight as your lines, because if they are off, then it will definitely show when you go to template this out in the aluminum and put them on there. Then we take 3 sheets of the 090 out of the sheet metal pack, lay that on there, tape it so that it's straight and firm, trace it with the template, and then just cut it all out with electric shears. Then once they're laid out, then you can go ahead and run cross beams where you need to for the deck. But we're really not even quite there yet. We still have to figure out how we're going to rig this side console. So this is a rotary steering column that we got from Sealight, and I bought an equivalent one from Amazon from Viber, and that one is really just as good. I don't really see a huge difference. The rotary steering is super basic. and simplistic. It runs off the same type of cable system. So in this case, going cheaper is going to be fine. If you're going to run hydraulic lines, then quality actually matters. You need to go with like C-Lite or U-Flex. But I've never heard of anybody's rotary steering column ever going out on them.
I got conduits, and these are pretty tight. Just PVC with sharp, short elbow fittings. Right there, they're just open. I mean, that's where we're gonna feed the starter wires. We're gonna feed the fish finder, the transducer, things that are kind of just in the way we'll feed. But we'll also have to run a thing here.
The conduit on the right side is something that was really common practice for a boat like this back in the day, and I just didn't take it too seriously into the early framing process and paid for that later because it was a real pain to make it after everything was already framed in. I should have, truth be told, made a much better one early on, but I got it done. I did it with welding, so it looked a little bit cleaner. We could have done it all with rivets, but I got it all done, but definitely something you should prioritize first. We had to custom make our own little top part to stick it all in there once it's all rigged. It was actually very tight. I definitely should have done this first because it almost didn't fit. I almost really screwed myself. That actually put me back 2 days to do that whole thing. Once I got that in there, I realized I couldn't really go any further without painting the boat and painting the console, and then I could start installing things. The boat already had some really robust primer on it, and I didn't feel like taking it down to bare metal, so all I did was just scuff that up real good with like 40 grit sandpaper, and then I cleaned it with acetone and denatured alcohol, and then hit it with self-etching primer. So I just got like the best possible etch and stick from the primer that I was going to get. The best way to do it is bring it down to bare metal, hit it with like 40 grit sandpaper, then etch wash it, and then primer it with like epoxy primer. That would be the key best stuff you could do, but well, this is a pretty close second, and let's be honest, it's going to be a job, it's going to get beat up, whatever. Not putting a whole lot of investment into this paint job, but it does need to look better than it does. Once you spray paint it, let it cure for 24 to 48 hours depending on the weather, and then give it a nice roughing up with a Scotch pad. Do not use sandpaper. The Scotch pad does a much better job of roughing up the surface without actually breaking into the aluminum again, which you would have to reprimer. Do this to every crevice of the primer because once the primer cures, it does seal, and you need to break up that seal or the paint will start flaking off after you try to apply it. When you go to prep the surface after scuffing it, wipe it down with denatured alcohol. Do not use acetone because it'll start to take the primer off. Today we are going to be using just straight up Rust-Oleum oil-based enamel. The smoke gray, they have black, white, blue, red. You can choose whatever, but that stuff is really the easiest, most accessible stuff to get. You just need to get some paint thinner because it is thick, so thin it up to like a skimmish milky consistency and get those little white foam rollers and spread it real thin, just thin, and do multiple thin coats until you're happy with it. In this case, I only had to apply like 2 coats, 3 in the back, and it came out really clean.
Came out nice. Probably if I had tipped it or used something a little bit more fancy, we could have got a really super nice finish, or if I had spray painted it, but I do feel that running the oil-based enamel over this is going to be the more robust and most long-term solution in terms of what people will do to it or how long it's used. I even went over it here. I did spray paint this initially, then I went over it with oil-based enamel because it's the same exact color. It's the smoke gray. The other stuff's smoke gray, this stuff's smoke gray. I'm pretty sure this stuff is just that stuff, but in aerosol, which means there's thinner in here to thin it so it's thin enough to spray, and then obviously the thinner dries out and the paint clumps and starts to dry, and it's just oil-based enamel anyways. My running theory, because it's so eerily similar. I mean, that's it. That's spray paint, and there's that. So I mean, like, it's like a verbatim match. I don't think it didn't come out. I don't know why. Everything else came out fine on all other sides. This front though gave me a few problems. It's kind of very matty. After reworking it a few times, so I could probably come back in here and sand this down and repaint it with the spray paint, just the very front of this, and then we're truly done. We're ready to rig this thing, and it's ready to go. I mean, that was the last frontier. I held off on pour foaming, I held off on completing all the wiring and completing all the console in general, specifically because of the paint job.
Now I can finish installing things. Yay. I've never fully rigged a console before, put them back together here and there, but I was pretty excited to get this thing finally done. Now to make the rod tubes, because we're going to have to make all conduits and tubing before we can ever pour the foam. We go ahead and heat the end up so it gets pretty hot. and it likes to stay hot for a while. So when you put it on that wine bottle, keep it on there for a good minute, because it takes a long time for that PVC to let go of that heat. And if you pull it too fast when it's too hot, then it'll unflare and you'll have to redo it again. But once it does flare, it's perfect. Find the bottle with the whitest base you can. It gives you the nicest flare, and the whiter the flare, the better it is. So let's go ahead and install these seats. But before we do that, we need to lay some turf and some rubber matting down there to kind of finish the cosmetic layout. So I want to turf in all the compartments. That's really the only internal storage I have besides the front storage, which is going to just be a robust, throw anything in there wet stow. But this stuff is like holding the batteries. And so foam in there is going to keep it cooler and also just more cushion. It's just going to be better for the atmosphere of the batteries. Later on, I realized that I had no conduit to actually run the trolling motor wire to the battery, so I had to remove one of those rod tubes which stunk. So that I made like one of those pieces of angle into a conduit, and I actually did that on the side over here. That way we can run the trolling motor wiring through there. And it was pretty nice. The bottom conduit was actually a really good idea. I wish I'd have thought of that in other builds because it looks pretty clean. You can barely tell it's there. And it's not very invasive. Because we're running a low horsepower and we're trying to make the boat really light, because of that, we were running lithium batteries.
That's crazy. That's how big a normal 100 amp hour lithium battery is. Look how much smaller that is. That could fit literally inside there. It's only about a ½ inch taller. That's fantastic. It's exactly what I need. I was gonna have to use a 50 or a 60 amp hour battery, which is a smaller one. But Power Queen sent me this one, and it's friggin' dope. Look at that right there. The good thing about these lithium batteries, you could lay them to the side. So if you have a low profile hatch like this, ain't no big deal anymore. Just lay them down here. And we'll also put some attachments here to ratchet it down. The post will be this way. The breaker will probably be right here. Very, very visible and easy to check if you need to. And also, a lot of people are talking about chargers. You got to get a charger that charges lithium. This one is going to be a 3-bank battery charger that charges the different variety of batteries we have in here. But specifically, it's always nice to really, if you're just going to have to worry about one battery, it's very nice to go with the proprietary. All battery companies make proprietary chargers.
Alright, let's get into this. I procrastinated this part. There's really nothing else left to do but do this, or I can't move forward. So it's time to pour the foam. This is 2-part polyurethane pour foam from US Composites that we got directly from our site. I do like this stuff over the total boat, mainly because of the slower work time and ease of use because of that. So you can go ahead and stir it to a golden consistency and just work your way around it with a little spatula thingy. I don't know what the hell that's called, a whisk? Yeah, we just use that. It's way easier than stirring it with like a popsicle stick or something. That's terrible. With a total boat, by the time I got it to a golden consistency like that, it's already expanding out of the bucket, and that's bad. You don't want it to do that. You want it to be still liquid when it's a solid gold like that. That way when you pour it, it's going to actually stick. If it's foaming, arguably it's weird, but it doesn't like to stick to whatever it doesn't contact when it's just bare liquid. And notice that it'll pull away after it heats up, and then it starts to retract when it cools down. It'll pull away from the actual aluminum. It's not the worst thing, but you kind of want that mechanical bond, because when the stuff is seated in there, right, it does smooth out the boat tremendously in terms of ride quality. Plus, this is the only foam we're going to actually stick in the boat. We're going to do 3 giant horseshoe-like shapes of this stuff in the back and in the front. We'll show you. But the reason we're doing a lot of it here is because, well, we didn't put any foam back in the subfloor or the sidewalls. Looking at that foam after inspecting, like, there's been no boat I've ever ripped up ever in a John boat where that foam was still good and not damaging the hull. But if there's no foam down there to damage the hull, then the hull just stays clean and water can freely run up and down the subfloor anywhere it wants, and the boat will still be unscathed. And so will the foam. Foam won't ever be exposed to the water. The front here slopes up into a contour, so water naturally flows down and funnels inward. But toward the back, all of that elevated subfloor paneling and siding and duct tape and gap filler that we stuck back there was to elevate that foam off of the back of the subfloor, because all the water likes to gather and sit in the back of the boat where the foam is most vulnerable. We had success with the elevated subfloor for the foam in the Starcraft, so we're going to go ahead and carry that forward in this build. Alright, it's time to turf this thing. No more turfing it in spots here and there. Let's just do the whole boat. Everything is done. There's nothing left after this but the final rigging, which is fairly simple because this is a simple build. Speaking of simplicity, this stuff is very easy to install. You do not need to cut out cardboard templates and put them on there. Nope, you just have to make your deck like this and lay it right over the deck. But a cleaner, safer way is just to cut that wax paper and just slightly make a cut across it. Not to cut into the foam, but just cut through the paper and then rip it off in sections. That way you have usable space to grab the foam and work it with your hands without actually touching the adhesive, which is not good. Remove all your latches if you had them in there. Make sure you hit it with acetone or denatured alcohol as a prep before you actually put it on there. And just make sure it's straight. As long as it's straight, the cut grooves will match right up to each other, one after another. They butt right up and the camo hides all the seams. And then you just follow the groove of where the hatch is and where the hinge is, and you just cut it out with the cheapest. I get those little dollar utility knives from Harbor Freight right at the checkout station. Those actually work the best. Nothing really fancy using here. It's an extremely simple process. We only got, what, 2 hatches to cut out of the back deck, and then the very back end of the 3-sided open-end hatch. Find the groove with your fingers, push down the foam to give an imprint, and then just cut right alongside it, rip it out. If the foam is kind of bowing up on the hinge, go ahead and just, after you cut it out, get a screwdriver and just lightly press it all back in there to get it all flat again. That's just a normal thing that happens when you cut out the strip because it never lays flat to begin with. When you get the foam sheets with adhesive, it's like literally minutes versus hours to install. If you're going to get it without adhesive, get it because you just want some traction mat somewhere that you can remove and throw around places. That's the only reason I would ever get it without the adhesive. Otherwise, if you get non-adhesive sheets and you try to buy your own adhesive, you're going to have to get contact cement. That stuff's expensive. It's very risky. You only have one chance to make it work with this adhesive. Unless you press down or leave it in the sun, you can go ahead and pull it up and refit it and make sure it's straight. The sheets themselves are not wide enough to span the entire top beam of the boat for the deck, but it doesn't matter. As long as you cut down the cut groove right in between and you make sure the other piece is straight, it butts right up and you cannot even tell that there was a cut. It is very cleanly done that way. Even in spots, that little square section back there, once we cut it in cement and overlap, it's going to look like nothing was ever there. This process takes a little bit of time, but it's generally very quick and very easy. It's the easiest stuff to install. All you gotta have is just some confidence to do it and an extra sheet just in case you mess one up. Have you noticed when we were pouring the foam earlier, we have those T-frame brackets running right where each of those aluminum sheets needed to be mounted. So now that it's all leveled out, it's just a matter of a lot of rivets, a lot of countersink. This is a pretty time-consuming task. You wouldn't think it is because all it is just drilling and riveting, but I tell you, the whole day will go by and you'll wonder where it went. During this process, metal shavings get everywhere, and it's kind of common practice to just seal off the gaps on your lid so they don't just fly in there and create a mess. Then pull it off after you're done riveting the entire hatch in. We're also going to be adding struts and cantilever latches to these hatches because they're heavy, you don't want them to hurt anybody, and just struts are just nice practice. And they're going to last because this hatch is aluminum, unlike wood where they generally fail.
Guys, these are our trolling motor trays, like our mounts. They come with a bracket here. They have bolt points. You would want to bolt them, not rivet it. In this case, we welded it, and we'll probably stick up rivets in there just to reinforce the end. And then they kind of just meant to go there and slide right over this. And they have an adjustability. The screws are back here, so where you can adjust them on a rail like that. So however height. So a lot of John boats are like this, and other V-hulls are like this. You guys stick it like here, and then you have your angle here, and then you can just trim and cut this, which we will probably be cutting it at this angle. And then bolting it here. And then I could have attached it here, but it was kind of like hanging down. So I put this right here just to raise it so it's a little bit more flush. So the trolling motor goes over. But this is so much easier. So you can bolt this. You can generally people are attaching it right to the gunnel, and you can just bolt right through there. This one will be a little bit difficult to do that. So this is helping us, but you can do that. That way you can always take the plate off through here and over here, and it's serviceable. And so if you ever want to trade out the trolling motor, because otherwise I was going to have to go really odd route to make this just this little bit skip, because this plate, I really don't ever want to take it off once it's on. It's just a huge pain to do that. I only want one area in. We had to re-weld a spot right here for the actual nav light pole, and that's really all I want. I was gonna have one for the trolling motor, but I'm gonna end up being able to run the trolling motor right through the tray, the power, so it'll be much easier just to do it that way.
Hey guys, just so you know, we're not just on YouTube, we're on all the other major platforms, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook. So if you're on those, be sure to check us out there too. Along the road to figuring out what some customers would like in a rental boat, somebody suggested putting in speakers in a radio. That was a real pain. I had to add, the only place I was going to be able to do it is on this wall, and I had to make a little aluminum box, just a box of speakers in, so they wouldn't get damaged by gear in there. That sucked really bad. But whatever, it came out all right. It looks pretty good. We just got a huge hole saw that I specifically bought for speakers, and we now have a safe base to install them once we turf that wall. That middle hole is the stock little vertical like compartment that they all had and even apparently still have today. We're going to definitely cover that up and just make it a serviceable like door to access any wire we need to run through there. We're down to the wire. We're just really going to start testing all the accessories and get this starting battery in there so we can finally just get to do a once over of the boat, because it should all actually work. Sure, it looks unrigged because it's not finished, but it's more or less finished enough for us to start testing things, test all the accessories, test the electronics, test the motor. Then this boat is only a day or two away from being on the water. Can't wait. Of course, why wouldn't it fail? I mean, why give me the 2-week personal record it would have taken me to build this boat and just throw a big, huge monkey wrench? I mean, the motor is the other half of the boat, let's be honest. You can't have the peanut butter without the jelly. And so this boat sat a whole another month. It just sat there collecting dust. It was kind of sad and miserable. It's never happened to me before. But somewhere down the line of sitting, that motor became a lemon. So I just broke down and didn't want to deal with fixing it because it was going to end up being more to fix it than the motor was worth. And at that point in time, you really just got to start looking at a new motor. Like, be realistic. Does anybody want to buy a brand new outboard? No. But sometimes maybe getting a loan for one, the longevity and the warranty and the ease of use and the sheer lack of problems that I'm not going to have because it's on the boat is going to be great. Yeah, I was a little iffy about putting a brand new motor on a rental boat because they might cut too close in and just destroy the lower unit on, I don't know, a point or something. It's just the risk you have to take, and I would have much rather taken it with a used motor that if it went, then it is what it was. But it's too late to turn back now. We got to do this. What it's supposed to do. Hey guys, thank you so much for the entire audience, all the patrons, channel members. This started out as an idea, it became a movement, and now it's the most incredible journey. Thank you all for getting us here. Check this out.
So long story short, it performs exceptionally well, and I think anybody who rents this boat will be very happy with what they can achieve on this lake if I just achieved that in a matter of a day and a half. I hope the people who use this boat can have similar experiences on this boat and have long-lasting memories. I don't know what this boat was way back in the day, but I know what it is now. It was 100% totally, completely worth it to restore this thing. I hope you feel the same way, guys. Tight lines. Peace.